the central bank was given to the system so that they are not lost. Central bank loved the idea, but somehow one of those things we never got that in place. How, besides these suggestions being made, can we ensure that all the actors can interface in a way that sees themselves as cooperating, even if in cases they may be competing, and therefore do not work at cross purposes? Because what happens currently is that there's a lot of working at cross purposes that's preventing the system from being able to deliver power cheaply to the people and profitably to the investors. So if you deal with that on the one hand, the second question is just do a comparative analysis of Nigeria, Egypt engaging Siemens and why the outcomes seem so different.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. The answer to the first question, I would describe what we have, which is not working, and what we should have, which is what will work. If you remember the book, Anna Karenina, the first sentence says that all happy families are alike, they look alike, and all unhappy families are different in their own unhappiness. Nigeria, we always get in trouble when we want to create something, super specific, something that allows for people to play the system and has all the loopholes that allows people to essentially steal money. If we do what other countries do, then you make money by creating something and by working hard. And if you have no place around the table, you will not be called around the table. The problem we have in Nigeria is that people who have absolutely no business in power are called to sit around the table to talk about power. So let me explain, the actors that we have in the room. Today we have TCN. TCN, for all intents and purposes, is NEPA. TCN is unreformed. It's not changed. It sits in the same building with the Ministry of Power. The same people who were there before were there during NEPA, and they are still there today. They wait for the budget, and their job is to essentially spend the money in the budget until the next budget. They have no consequences if the grid works well, and they have no penalties if the grid doesn't work well. So that clearly is a zombie institution. That institution needs to be helped. There are some smart engineers there. They need to be, somebody needs to come there and create a condition where the smart guys work and people who have no use in the institution can ship out. Then the other part of this whole system are the GENCOs. The GENCOs are a very interesting lot. We go from a company like Azura, which is a world-class engineering result. It's a Siemens factory that works like clockwork. It generates power reliably. It can give you uninterrupted power if you want to take it. Then you have some companies like part of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, 11 generating companies. Some of them have no gas supplies. Some of them have no power evacuation. Some of them have their turbines already condemned. And that's, again, another zombie sector that needs to be cleaned up. Then you have the distribution companies. Distribution companies come in different shapes and sizes, but ultimately, they do not have today an incentive to give you uninterrupted power. So they give you power some of the time. They send you bills that sometimes have no connection to whether or not you've received power. They know they will always get money. They get some money from you as a consumer, and then they go to Abuja and get even more money. So that is what we have today. It's a whole network of people with different interests, different objectives that are not aligned to supplying power reliably, cheaply, and accessibly to the Nigerian populace. What we should have is we should have a system where if you want to play in this market as a power generator, like in the UK, you sign a contract. You have to deliver power at a certain time, of a certain quality, of a certain quantity. If you do, you get paid. If you don't, you pay fines, big fines. So you set up a bank guarantee to the system that I will deliver 100 megawatts of power 24/7 every day of 2023. And any day you don't deliver power, you get fined. And any day that you deliver power, you are 100% sure you'll be paid. Then on the other side, we need a transmission system where the operators of this system are incentivized to continue to improve on it. If if you look at pictures of China, how they, and America and UK and Germany, all the developed countries, you see men hanging off high tension, thousands of volts wires, working on live wires to make sure that that system works all the time. You go to places like Russia, where you go from -50 to +50, they still make sure that the system works. You go to Canada, they have some weird weather event, and they still make sure that that system continues to work. So you need an operator of the transmission system who is paid to make sure that this system is up and running nearly 100% of the time, so 99.999% of the time. That is their only function, to make sure that the electrons can flow through the system in a way that they do not make the news. So no news, you get paid. If there's news, you lose a lot of money. So you need somebody who can give, again, another financial guarantee to the system and say, I will make sure the power flows through the system. And then you get paid for that. And so that is the kind of new economy which some people are not interested in. And I hear people say that P2B is too transparent for Nigeria. But unfortunately, being transparent is what delivers this type of lifestyle.
You know, on the first telethon, we had an American, an investor in the power sector speak to this manifesto and what they find attractive about it. And clearly, one of the most important things in getting things done is sunlight,
Absolutely.
transparency.
Absolutely.
We have an elite that has lived off rent in Nigeria. Many policies fail in Nigeria because powerful Nigerians don't want Nigeria to work, because their so-called money is from Nigeria not working. But interested parties all over the world do things that eventually lead to boundaries that prevent these kinds of things from happening. That's what institution building is about. What is it that has, and Sam, I'd probably like for you to start out on this. What is it about the Nigerian experience that has been very disruptive of institution building, where we can have boundaries to conduct that ultimately we can say that there are certain settled habits of a community, which is that this is reward for your work, and this is behavior that you get heavily sanctioned for, and so on and so forth. Weak institutions. You have been in that power sector. What makes for these weak institutional arrangements in the power sector?
Okay, Prof, a very, very important question you asked. Lately, I've been reading up on the failure of the Nigerian project. In fact, the last is Larry Diamond's book on class, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. Now, the private sector advocates forget that market is embedded. You know, we used to have a theory in political economy, you know very well, called embedded markets. So markets are embedded in social relations and social conventions of a people. The power sector, when I came in, I observed that the power sector was unbalanced in the power sector plan. So much was focused on privatizing without thinking about reforming. So in a little piece I wrote, I said privatizing without reforming. You talk about, Jeremy talked about TCN, for example. Now, if you look at the power roadmap, and look at the EPSRR, and look at the NEP, there are stages. First, unbundle, which we did. Second, you corporatize, which means all these entities, TCN, Abuja Disco, or Enugu Disco, Port Harcourt Disco, they will all have their own separate corporate management, board and management teams set up differently. Then they will operate by corporate rules, code of conduct, run like companies. Then the next stage, you commercialize. That means they're going to run as basically enterprises that be profitable, least cost, quality of service. But until we sold those assets, there was no effort to fully corporatize them. TCN didn't have a board up to today. The discos, even though they've been corporatized, Lagos company, Eco, and so on. They were still being run as if they were part of the parastatal Ministry of Power. I recall I had several issues I quarreled with the minister and up to the president, where I said, look, this is a regulated entity. The essence of regulation is that every cost must pass through regulatory oversight for prudence and for relevance. I remember one instance where the minister says, we need to put 5 billion on AFAM. I said, Mr. President, there is no report, there is no cost-benefit analysis. There is no cost, not audit telling us what this 5 billion is going to do and what value, because all costs in the power sector has to be recovered to the consumer. So you must show it is relevant, you must show it is prudently acquired. I had issue with NNPC, Minister of Petroleum there. So what am I getting to, sir? Is that even though we say we are privatizing, even though we say we are going to do private sector electricity market, we are still running the underlying norms and values of those operations and not the market values of market transparency, of clarity, of regulation, which means you pass all the costs to the regulator. He does prudence check, confirms that those are relevant, and then approves the invest. So these are some of the challenges we have.
Okay, I was going to say something.
Yes. I want to.
Sorry, I'm back. Let me conclude.
Okay.
Should I go ahead, sir? To conclude? Okay. So the final point I want to make is that you are right, sir. The values, the norms, and the regulatory framework we run, and also the policy, the notion that this is a market, you are going to hands off, you're going to run by rules. I recall, for example, when you're supposed to have independent directors in each of those entities, and then they have not, you appoint persons who are part of the consortium as independent directors. You compromise on that oversight. The final example, when we were supposed to hand over to these entities to the owners, I was with the vice president. I said, sir, they have not met up the requirement of the rules for handing over the certificate. But the vice president says, look, sir, let's give them, they'll come back to you. So I think the lesson is, you need a government, a leader like P2B, somebody who will first have lack of commitment, who is not peculiarly connected to transactions. If you are in government and you are part of those who are buying assets, then you already compromise the level of policy neutrality, regulatory objectivity, and strength you need to drive the sector is compromised. Again, we claim to be running market-based operations, but essentially we are basically running state capitalism, which is the fact that the government is through proxies get involved in these operations and therefore compromise their capacity for fair, objective, and market-enhancing regulation. So I think really that there is a cultural and value problem that is also making our transition to markets not efficient, and even sometimes worse than efficient public ownership.
Effect you can have of state capture. I mean, you can see it play through in the power sector. The whole privatization process was perceived as an opportunity for friends to get something that will make them easy money. They saw how people who went into telecoms made so much money. So they took the same mindset, oh, well, our friends can make so much money in the power sector, forgetting that competence and capacity to actually build that sector were critical factors. And everybody's stuck in the mud. The country is suffering more. But okay, consumes plenty of power.
Exactly.
You know, I don't know how much is.
I want to come in as the common man, because I've been listening attentively, and I put myself in the mold of the average power consumer who does not understand all this grammar. Like P2B said in one of the sound bites, that is only in Nigeria that people are forced to know Jenko, disco, and all manner of jargons that they are not supposed to know. Yeah. What you want is turn on the switch and you see power. All right? All these jargons that we are saddled with as consumers, we don't want to know all this. We want a society where things are functioning. But having listened to all this, what I take away from it is that The reason nothing is working, the way I break it down in my head, one is regulatory inefficiency, inconsistency of policies, overbearing effect of elite rent seekers who just, or what we call cabal, who just want to make sure that nothing works. Now, in all this power play of the high and mighty, is there anything in the whole power policy or power equation that empowers the people? Because we always say power belongs to the people. Power belongs to the people. All right? Is there anything that the consumers can do on their own part to hold people accountable, to make sure that if I have this meter and these people are going to be collecting bill, there's also something that I can do if I don't get the services that I'm paying for. Yeah.
In a place like New York, till today, CONED has to run public rate hearings where interested members of the public will come and CONED will present its issues and propose rates, and people will say, no, we should not be able to interrogate and challenge those. And the people actually then hold, because in many ways, power is a monopoly of sorts. You know, the competitiveness that you have in selling Omo is not there with power. It's got to be some kind of, oligopoly of sorts that plays in that sector. Because of it, there is a necessary reason for the people to listen to you and question your rates. This.
Prof, just to join, to answer the question about what the people what the people can do and how they get power into their hands in order to change things for the better. I think it's important to actually point out that the powers that be, the cabal, as OK put it, the people who own the country, as some other people put it, they are being a little short-sighted. And so I have good news for them. The ideas contained in the Obi-Datti manifesto are actually ideas that will create bigger opportunities for people who already have the means. Yeah, but they have to do the right thing.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example. For example, if you look at Brazil, for example, Brazil Electric has a market cap of $87 billion. Now, there is none of these companies in Nigeria that has a market cap of anything that's significant. They're all, in the tens of millions of dollars. Nothing significant because of the system we've built. I even have bad news for the owners of Nigeria. The bad news is the way you have built Nigeria and the way you have made money, you're going to fail in the one fundamental thing which anybody who is successful wants to do. You cannot pass this money to your children.
Next generation.
Because the money is not standing on solid foundation. The money has not been made in a way that you can transfer it to the next generation. And therefore, the vision that the Obi-Datti manifesto presents is a way where we'll start to do things in a normal way, and we'll start to build things in ways that can be transferred, and we'll start to build things that are bigger and that make sense for everybody. And finally, with regards to the common man has an advantage. I'll just say something, which is solar power has fallen in price by 90% in 10 years. In another 5 years, nobody in northern Nigeria will be forced to buy power from somebody who is not supplying power on a reliable basis. And therefore, this is a time for us to build a system that can continue to add good services to those common people to make them to want to sign on to power from big companies.
No, they just put one thing on their roof.
Otherwise, they will generate
themselves. They won't
themselves.
need you. Yeah, but to return to a question that I raised, just to get Nigerians to understand how differently our leaders think from leaders of other countries and why we are behind and why the Obi-Datti approach is different. Let's compare Nigeria and Egypt and their agreement with one company called Siemens.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. So the agreement with Siemens, the way the Egyptians went about it and the way the Nigerian government went about it shows us, two different ways of doing things. In Egypt, the government knew that the government is not a power company. They can't design manage and run things like this. So they invited companies in Egypt and said to them, we want to strengthen the transmission system, we want to build new generation, and when all these are working together, we want to build a high-speed electrified railway system to connect all the Egyptian cities. 3 things they wanted to do. They had clear objectives, and they made sure that the country understood these objectives. They were not going to change. And so 2 companies stepped forward, Ellsworthy Electric and Orascom. And those companies provided the initial equity, I think about $400 million. And then the Egyptian government then worked with Siemens to raise all the debt, about $8 billion, from about 30 banks to finance the project. So you had an owner who understood electricity, who had tens of thousands of workers, who had know-how, who had engineers, who knew what they were doing, who had project management staff, and they were not going to change. They were not here today, gone tomorrow people. And therefore, they were able to, in 27 months, build brand new capacity of 12 gigawatts of electricity. And now they finished the generation stage of the project. They've done the strengthening of the transmission, and right now they're building the high-speed electricity network. Come to Nigeria. We did it in our own way. So we set up a government commission, and then, the chief of staff to the president traveled and signed some contracts, and then we set up a government company, and then we signed a contract with Siemens, and then the Siemens project in Nigeria is being paid from the budget. So the Federal Executive Council will meet in January, decide to issue money to Siemens. The Ministry of Finance will go looking for the money. The money may or may not turn up after 3 or 4 months. And when the money turns up, Siemens starts working. When the money runs out, they stop working. And so a case of 2 countries, in Egypt, done and dusted. In Nigeria, we're still waiting for the next Federal Executive Council meeting.
Wow. I mean, it is so painful. I mean, for me, I've been traveling to Egypt since 1986, fairly frequently. And just seeing what has happened in a short period under El-Sisi and what we are doing says what the meaning of absence of leadership is. While we were talking about this power thing in Egypt, a group of us just standing outside during the last Afro-Exim Bank annual general meeting, there was the president of the AFC from Nigeria here, who was in our group, and then he said, look, just give you an example of what we're talking about. They co-financed the project. Because time matters. You see, the Egypt one is all dusted 20, how many months?
27 months.
Our own, we've not even, when I made a statement on this matter some months ago, federal government had to quickly begin to say, no, the transmission, you're going to start shipping from Italy. Because at that time, I heard that Siemens may be going to a kind of force majeure because some of the equipment for Nigeria, which came from our budget, was being manufactured in Ukraine, which was now being, and all of that. But Egypt's own, 20-something months, the power was in place, it was running. Our own, first of all, we took several months to work it through our executive council. The Ministry of Finance had to be gathering the money, then we paid. Then they started building it in Ukraine and somewhere. When I talked about this on TV, they said, no, the one from Italy will be shipped soon. I've not seen them yet. I don't know, unless you've seen the equipment right yet. But they're still.
Not seen anything.
Besides the fact that we lose so much time in all this pussyfooting, finagling that we're doing, and that is cost. Time is money. We're losing that advantage. There is the fact that by the time we get this in place, windows of opportunity will have gone past us. And many times we don't get, as I gave the example of Nura Imam 30 years ago. If we're going to catch up with that error, take us under 20-something years maybe. And somehow the Nigerian people need to understand these things. Because our people are not educated on policy and don't pay attention, governments are killing the Nigerian people every day with wrong choices. And this is what this program is about. It's what the elections process is about. It's what political parties are supposed to be about. To articulate these things. Look, in South Africa, ANC policy issues are discussed at ward level, all the way back up and affect government policy. We only discuss words when elections are coming. We want to give people money to get. We need to reinvent Nigeria. Because if we're not going to do that, we're going to be fluffing and fluffing in the bush for a very long time. I think that, power is of such fundamental importance. If we say going from consumption to production, how can we produce when there is no power? The average vulcanizer has to find a better past my neighbor to do. Do you know that once power is just generally available, this economy, the GDP ramp up from and you don't do anything else, just that you have power available, will be in multipliers. And here we are talking about things that small countries have solved. And I finish this with it's not a joke, but it sounds like a joke. A friend of mine who was a minister in Nigeria in finance was on a flight while he was minister, government minister, from somewhere in West Africa into Lagos. So, and the person said to the minister, not knowing he was a minister, said, "You Nigerians, this problem with power, is it that you people don't know where they sell these generators? If you don't, I can introduce you to them because this thing is a very simple matter. Light problem was solved 100 years ago. When the minister landed, he thought the only thing that made sense was for him to call me because he said, Patrick told me he would like to hear this. Okay, we got to go. We'll return to Adiboyi.
First of all, let us say thank you very much. Thank you very much to Mr. Jerome and Sam Amadi and Professor Pat. Thank you very much. What my takeaway from all this is as complicated as this whole thing for you, the layperson who's listening, because we know that there are lots of young people who are tuned in who want to understand because this power thing affects them the most. For all of you, you have seen all the big players in the power equation, all the big grammar and all the big policies. And which was why I asked that question, where does the poor masses come into the equation? And my takeaway is that it's your PVC last. Because it's for you to elect people who have clear-cut policy on how they are going to transform this whole thing. And once you miss it at that point, whatever you get, you take it like that. You take it over from there. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay, we know we've been to so many countries from Plus TV Africa here in Lagos. We have Singapore, Italy, Egypt. But when you have people like Prof. Jerome, okay, and Sam talking to you, these are names that will take you to a new Nigeria. But what will take you more to a greater Nigeria and the world is your contribution. You can always submit all of that on your screen. We'll go on a very short break, and when we return, it is still Obi-Datti Global Fundraising Telethon.
Record. Are you obedient? I am obedient. Are you obedient? We are obedient. Now my president, you think we are one better tomorrow. We no want to load, no. That the person we need. If you want better tomorrow.
Voting in this election? Sure. Who will vote out? Okay, now, why will you vote for them? Because it's very capable to rally so we can lead Nigeria to our best. So everybody can
Will you be voting in this election?
Yes, I will.
And who are you going to do? Who are you voting?
Yeah, for me, that's what I think.
Do you think we are going to that this election is our only hope for Nigeria? So if you get it wrong this election, we are done for.
Yeah.
Dear Obedience, we are thrilled. With support of Nigerians like you, we have achieved the following. Motivated and mobilized millions of Nigerians to register to vote and have collected their PVCs. Recruited agents and election monitors in all polling units across the country. I've already held presidential rallies and town hall meetings with women and youth in over 33 states. Thank you for your faith and support. Election is 13 days away. Support us so that together we shall finish victoriously what we have started. Donate now any amount of your choice into the Big Tent Bank account, FCMB 9450000012. Thank you.
Dr. Leon had just told you about Willow. I don't know Willow from Adam. I knew him when I became a governor. He told me he's a heart specialist, that he can do heart operation with this. I said, why don't you come and do it in Anambra State? He told me there's no hospital where he can do it. I said, you know what you're going to do? Give me the cost of all the equipments you need to do it. And I went to a mission hospital. By the time we calculated, everything came to almost $1 billion. I wrote the check and gave the mission. I said, listen, set it up. He's there, he's working. They haven't operated on me, but they're saving other people's lives. Why will I use that money? Why will I take that money to come and buy a house in Atlanta? Do I live in Atlanta? No. If I come to Atlanta, I pay for a hotel and go. This hotel room cannot cost more than $200 a night. I won't even pay if it's more, because I only want to sleep. Now people come here and pay for $2,000 to sleep. If anybody takes $2,000 from me, I'll be awake, thinking they're stealing my money. Why will I sleep?